Hello, and welcome to What's Sizzling, the podcast that covers all things marketing. We have new guests each episode from companies covering all verticals. As always, I'm your host, Mitch Levinson, and with me today, we have Julia O'Connor. Hi, Julia.
Hi, Mitch.
We're both with Creative Sizzle. And in this week's episode, we have Marcus Melnick with the Firearm Mentor. And Marcus is going to join us here in just a few minutes after the break. I'm very excited to have Marcus back on the show.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have this conversation. I think it's a little bit of a heavier conversation than what we're used to on the podcast here, but I think it's going to be a really, informative and riveting conversation.
Yeah, Marcus does the Firearm Mentor. He does concealed carry classes, and he teaches people how to use firearms and weapons the right way. And his classes are very important. They talk about not only protection and the use of a firearm, but they talk about safety and procedures and laws and things like that. And we're going to talk with Marcus today a little bit about some of the cases going on. And right now in today's world, it's really important to have a good understanding of firearms and the way that they work with, some of the recent riots that have happened, or about, a year and a half. You can remember that incident that happened in Texas in the church where someone walked in with a gun, and the parishioners or the churchgoers, they actually took care of the situation, with the least amount of issue that they could handle. But the way that the world handles it, you think about self-defense, or you think about, things like that. And people typically think of, martial arts. I'm going to go learn self-defense. I'm going to go take a, karate or taekwondo class. And they don't really always think about protecting yourself with a weapon or a firearm. And, in the class, Marcus talked a lot about the difference between words semantically between, the connotation to a word like gun, or a connotation to a word like firearm or weapon or things like that. So, I'm really excited to have this conversation today with him, to talk a little bit more about some of those things. But Julia, what, when people think of, or they say to you, self-defense, what do you think of?
I think I'm on the same page as you, especially as a, younger female person. Even in college, I remember there were some, like you said, like kickboxing, self-defense, classes that they really encouraged, especially women to take, so that we could be able to defend ourselves in a slightly less than ideal situation. And I'm with you, though. I think that, and something else that I think we're going to talk about later today is the difference between, like sometimes you just don't know if a person has a disability that's recognized by the government. You don't know if they're able to physically, with just their person, defend themselves. And sometimes that's a good thing to kind of keep in mind, that sometimes a firearm is their only means of defense.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I'm certainly, older, and, I lose a couple of pounds, for sure. No doubt about it. And, if I got into an incident with, a younger, late 20s, early 30s man in a scuffle, he would be able to exert more force than I would, right? It's this disparity of force is something that Marcus talked about in the class, where I'm just an old, heavier guy, and he's, much more fit. And so being able to protect myself in a way that makes sense, not just, because I know karate or taekwondo, or I'm carrying a bottle of mace. How do I de-escalate the situation without actually causing harm to anyone? Because, I'm a pretty easygoing, fun-loving guy. I really don't want to get into, arguments or scuffles. I just, I want to be protected, and you never know what you're going to run into out there. And it's kind of funny that, the last time I talked to Marcus, he was talking about, if you knew right before you were going to get into an accident, that would be a great time to put on your seatbelt. How do you know when you're going to get into an incident? How do you know when you're going to go to church and all of a sudden someone is going to break out with a rifle or an assault weapon? How do you know what's going to happen next? So, part of the reason I took the class, and, a lot of his students take his classes, is because there is so much unknown in the world today. And how do you prepare for it? So you prepare with education. And I'm not saying you shouldn't take martial arts classes and you shouldn't be prepared physically, but how do you prepare yourself for situations so that you can help de-escalate a situation when it happens?
Right. I think honestly, just in general in society today, I mean, education and knowledge, it's all power. So anything that you can do to give yourself a leg up and really have a better understanding, especially on a topic as sensitive as this one is, I think that all the better,
it is such a sensitive topic. You bring that, that's pretty funny, so it's like, people think of it's so political, but it's really not. I try not to bring politics into anything. And, I grew up around guns and weapons, and I have one now. There was a long period of time where I didn't have any. And I have, been hunting in my life and all this other stuff. And my wife is a vegetarian to a certain extent. So I live across all of those lines, but it's really not political. There are ways that you can control the way that you use or operate weapons or guns or firearms. And quite honestly, the criminals, they're not going to be using them the same way that the honest people are. So how do you deal with that? So it's definitely an interesting, people say, it's, if you like guns, you're a Republican. If you don't like guns, you're a Democrat. I don't know that it's really across those lines. So we're gonna try today to keep it not political, and just really talk about the importance of protecting yourself in today's world, because actually that is your Second Amendment right. So when we return from the break, we're going to talk with Marcus. So stay tuned if you're interested in figuring out a way to de-escalate situations and to protect yourself in a way that makes sense, whether you have disability, whether you don't. Stay tuned. We're going to be back with Marcus Melnick, the Firearm Mentor. Are you a company looking to offer a trade show or a training program or have some other company event, but don't know how now that COVID is over and the pandemic is opening up? Contact Sheena Lynn Majette with SLM Education Solutions at slmeducationsolutions.com, and she can help. She offers innovative ways to program events and have events with positive outcomes. Whether you are looking for a format for an education seminar or for a daily event or for a trade show, contact Sheena Lynn Majette and she can help at slmeducationsolutions.com. Welcome back to What's Sizzling, the podcast that covers all things marketing. Today's guest, we have Marcus Melnick with us today with the Firearm Mentor. Marcus, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Mitch and Julia. How are you guys today?
We're doing great. I want to start with, Marcus, we've known each other for a long time. Our kids played baseball together, and, I took the concealed carry class from you a little bit ago and did it because of, the change in the world, want to really protect myself and things like that. And in the opening segment, Julia and I talked about the difference between self-defense in a physical sense, like you want to take karate, taekwondo, whatever, or, self-defense in terms of this. You have a long history in safety and public safety. So, why don't we start with, tell us a little bit about how you got into the business or a little bit of your background.
Well, I grew up in Skokie, and for those of the listeners who are in Skokie or Lincolnwood, there used to be a bowling alley on Lincoln Avenue called Gabby Hartnett. And what a lot of people didn't know is the basement of Gabby Hartnett Bowling Alley was actually a shooting range. And since I was about 7 years old, my father started to teach me how to shoot, first with a pellet gun, and then we would go to the range. And for me, it was a dad-son thing that we did. We only did. My mom wasn't involved. My sister wasn't involved. It was just him and me. And I carried on the tradition. I went into public safety work, where I worked for police and fire departments. And ultimately, I made the switch to the private sector in business. But I worked in public safety for 27 years. And when concealed carry came out in 2013, I was asked to be an instructor. So I got the official certifications. I already had the knowledge. You always learn something in a class, but I needed the actual piece of paper that says I can teach. Developed the curriculum, applied to the state, was insured, bonded, licensed, et cetera. And that's how I got into it.
Mm-hmm. I have a similar upbringing. I grew up as a hunter, and I was, hunting from the time I was 8 years old, and then, 13 or deer hunting and stuff like that. My dad would take me and not my sisters, and it was the same kind of thing. And, it seems like it's generational. My daughter was very interested in going with my dad, her grandfather, shooting and things like that. My sons were too, but not as much as my daughter was. So it seems like the market is expanding to, like everything else, right? It used to be only boys did this and girls, they do that. But now it seems like it's across the board. My wife actually took the class with me. You know, Carolyn, we went to the range. Part of your class is going to the range. And by the way, I've, grew up going to Gabby Hartnett a lot also. But, she's a better shot than I am. That's for sure. So if we're ever in a situation where we only have one weapon, I'm standing behind her because she is for sure, being the daughter of a a policeman killed in the line of duty, she is for sure gonna hit what she's aiming at. So for all those people thinking about doing something at our house, I might pick someone else's house if Carolyn.
And that's a funny point you make. Whenever I have couples take the class or book a lesson, every time, 100% of the time, the woman shoots better than the man. And I make the joke of, you hold the babies, talking to the man, and let her defend the family. I don't know why it happens. You ask anyone in the firearms industry, they will tell you women are better shooters than that.
For sure, that case in my family, no doubt about it. You brought up babies a little bit. It's a funny story how you got, the nickname Tactical Daddy. We talked about that the last time. Tell us a little bit about that.
My second son was born. He was in the hospital. I was responsible for taking care of my older son, who's now almost an adult, and he was still in diapers. So my wife would say to me, "You need to have the diaper bag." I'd say, "But I'm in the backyard." "No, you need to have the diaper bag." So she was always on me to basically carry a purse. I didn't want to carry a purse. So we came up with this idea of a multi-pocket vest. And if you could picture like a photographer's type vest, that morning when my second son was born and I had to bring the older one to meet his brother for the first time, I walked by the closet and just like a cartoon, the light bulb went on above my head. And I had this multi-pocket vest. I took it down and I dumped out the diaper bag and started putting diapers in one pocket, wipes in another, etc. I show up to the hospital and I get, "What are you wearing? And where is the diaper bag?" And so I said, "I'm wearing the diaper bag. I'm the tactical daddy." And they started taking diapers and wipes out and everyone's laughing. And I did it as a joke. It was supposed to be funny. And then someone said, "You should market that." So I was doing uniform procurement for a police and fire department. This is one of the products that was offered to us. And I met with them about rebranding it and marketing it to parents or to first-time fathers who really didn't want to carry a diaper bag. And I went through the patent office, got the trademark of the name Tactical Daddy, kept it as an email address. The product has run its course, so it's not for sale anymore. But the story is fantastic, just like Mitch said, and that's one of my nicknames, one of my positive nicknames. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, no, that's a great story. All of the men who are listening to this can relate, and I'm sure some of the ladies also. But yeah, no, definitely a great story. So we mentioned in the opening segment, Julie and I talked a little bit about self-defense, protecting yourself, society in general, and being prepared. And I think I referenced, some of the riots that were going on, some of the political things that were happening, earlier this year, the end of last year. And, I brought up Texas church a year and a half ago, and there's lots of circumstances or incidents that any of us can really think of where, a weapon is involved, or firearm is involved. And it's handled a lot differently than when there isn't a weapon involved. You had two cases that you talked about at the concealed carry class, and they're kind of foundational cases. Tell me a little bit about how you feel or what you think of some of the situations that happen, or what is the best way for someone who is thinking about protecting themselves? What should they really be thinking about from a legal or a case standpoint?
That question has several answers. First of all, just to lay the foundation, these two cases, and this is fact, I posted in a networking group and I offended someone, but this is actually the law. DeShaney versus Winnebago County and Castle Rock versus Gonzales, their federal Supreme Court cases say that police departments do not have an obligation to protect individual citizens. And we've seen that. We've seen that with the riots, with rioters not being arrested for destroying businesses. And we've seen that with people hurting people during these incidents. And the police, they formed a perimeter, and I love the police, but the scene was too dangerous for them to go into. So my thoughts are, and this is throughout my life, this isn't just self-defense, but my thoughts are to be prepared. And being prepared is more than just having a firearm on your belt. It means having a flashlight in your house for power outages, having some extra water if there's a boil order. And likely what's going to happen in the Chicago area. There's going to be a weather-related, it's not going to be a crime, although it can happen. I live in Buffalo Grove. Buffalo Grove has a reputation of being relatively low crime, but sexual assaults do occur. And in 9mm, 45, a 38, the best weapon you can have is knowledge. So part of what I teach in the class is awareness, being aware of what's around, paying attention to your body, the hair on your neck standing up, and avoiding the danger. I'm not SEAL Team Marcus. I don't run in and save the day. I am responsible for my family, myself, and that's it.
Situational awareness is so important, and I wish more professions really talked about it. In the early part of my career, I was a realtor, and I used to show houses. And it's a very dangerous profession if you think about over the years how many people are attacked or assaulted because someone is sitting in a house all by themselves, and that's someone to take advantage. Someone else's valuables are right upstairs somewhere. So it's a very dangerous perception. The real estate industry teaches situational and locational awareness, and they teach you when you're showing a house where to stand as compared to who you're standing with, who's looking at the house. You don't want to go into a room. You want them to go into the room, and you want to be behind them so that you are closest to the exit just in case. You don't want to be, and whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, it doesn't really matter. Whether there's one person with you or three people with you, you have to make sure that you're putting yourself in a situation, in a place where you're safe and protected. And it's kind of the same thing that you're talking about in terms of education and awareness, situational awareness, understanding your surroundings, being observant to see what's going on, and making sure you remain calm and you understand what the situation is. Tell me a little bit about gun safety and you calm and protected in certain situations.
Well, first of all, there's a term in psychology called a hot amygdala, which is part of the brain. And when your amygdala gets hot, and I'm making quotes with my fingers, basically your emotional center of your brain is at a heightened state where your rational part of your brain is at a very lower state. It's very hard to make rational decisions. That's one of the reasons why, and this is going to sound a really left field, when you go to the hospital and you have anesthetic, that you cannot take an Uber home, a cab home. You have to have a family member take you home because you're in a state where your cognitive abilities are not that high. So a lot of the class talks about this and talks about how the physiological reactions of an adrenaline dump. Your heart rate increases, your breathing increases, you have heightened sight and sound acuity, but only on the threat. So it's tunnel vision, it's auditory exclusion. And a lot of this is just understanding it. I experienced tunnel vision. Now you're going to think, oh, I went in to save the day. But quite honestly, it was when I was playing softball. I was the catcher, and I realized that I had tunnel vision onto the ball and I wasn't reading the field. So I had to psychologically fight myself, and I used that as a teaching experience to widen my view of the field. Same thing happens in an incident that could hurt someone. So your best bet is to kind of pre-plan, walk down the street, think, oh, what am I going to do? Go into a movie theater, note where the exits are, ask your children, where are the exits? And that has nothing to do with the shoot. Well, it could have something to do with the shooting, but it's more for a fire. So safety and awareness should permeate everyone's life. Just like you're taught to drive defensively, you should carry yourself in society defensively. And that just means being aware of your surroundings.
I think that's great advice. And for those of you that are listening that are interested in finding out a little bit more, how to take a class or just to meet Marcus and talk to him about safety or concealed carry or firearm ownership, or if you're a new gun owner and you want to learn how to shoot it better, whatever the case may be, you can get in touch with Marcus. So Marcus, share with them the URL. Tell them how to get in touch with you.
Okay. The URL is firearmmentor.com. So that's FIREARM, a second M, ENTOR.com. My email address, and thank you for having me share the Tactical Daddy story, is tacticaldaddy@gmail.com. And my phone number is 224-588-2489. Only thing I ask is when you contact me, just tell me where you heard about me, and they'll say the podcast, and it'll all click for me.
Marcus, I love having you on the show. Definitely a great resource. I think of you more often than I wish when I'm watching the news. Because of a lot of what the news is, getting my concealed carry and, being safely around guns for the 50 or more years of my life. It's definitely a pleasure to have you on and work with you to share the knowledge with people and make sure that everyone, whether they are pro or not, towards firearms or guns, understand that it's about the people, and it's about safety, and it's about education, and it's about protection. So Marcus, thank you very much for being on the show.
It was my absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Great. And we'll be back in just a minute. So stay tuned. This episode of What's Sizzlin' is brought to you by Creative Sizzle, an award-winning marketing agency that builds brand and drives sales. Did you know that SEO and SEM are very different? While many people have a hard time differentiating between the two, we have had many years of experience building effective SEO, search engine optimization, and SEM, search engine marketing plans. Creative Sizzle makes it possible for your business to be seen at the top of popular search engine result pages. Whether you're looking for free, organic tactics, or want to spend some cash to see results, Creative Sizzle can help with your digital marketing. Visit creativesizzle.com to learn more. And now, let's get back to the show. Welcome back to What's Sizzlin', the podcast that covers all things marketing. We just had a great conversation, Julia, with Marcus Melnick with the Firearm Mentor. What did you think?
I thought it was really informative, super interesting. He's got, a really great way of like telling these stories and informing people, and it captures your attention. It makes you want to learn a little more.
Yeah. And, he's got a great personality. He's funny. And, we talk about a lot of different things and really the goal of, helping people understand and educating them on the use of firearms and self-defense and the laws that surround that. It's really great and enlightening to have him on the show. So if you are a new gun owner, if you're looking at getting your concealed carry or you want some more education, I definitely recommend visiting firearmmentor.com or sending him an email at tacticaldaddy@gmail.com. He is my go-to resource for sure for all things related to firearms. But yeah, getting the word out is very important.
Absolutely. I think that this is great light to shine on this topic for sure.
Yeah, no matter what side of the conversation you are on, and there's certainly more than two sides of this conversation, he's a great resource of information. And, what I liked about what he said was it's fact. There's a difference between fact and opinion. And it could be fact, it could be case law. There's a lot of things that people interpret their own ways, but you can't really interpret facts differently. It is what it is. So having the right facts and learning, the right things is definitely a great way to learn from Marcus about a lot of the things that he teaches.
Right. I think it was really interesting too that he extended the conversation beyond just, firearms, but talking about, being in that movie theater situation and knowing the exit points and your experience as a realtor. I think that was all really good, information and a good way to think about it beyond just that one item or topic and being able to move that into your entire life as a whole. I think that that's really important for people to take away.
Yeah, I know. And that, it comes from his years in public safety. He really is an expert in public safety and helping people just live, be happy, great personality, but, be careful about the situations that they put themselves in and be prepared for the situations that they find themselves in. And so I think that's really great information from him because, the movie theater, you think about sitting in a movie theater with 75 of your closest friends, watching a movie, and then, what happens when something happens? I was in a movie theater and we had an incident where there were some kids behind us and they passed out. They took some drugs and they were in the back of the movie theater, and one of them threw up, and the other one was kind of unconscious, and Carolyn, my wife is a nurse, so she went and started to attend to them, and when we realized that they needed to bring a gurney in, and the paramedics were there, how are we going to get all of these people out through those two little doors and the paramedics in? So it was interesting to be in a situation like that where it wasn't a fire. We didn't have to hurry to get out of there, but it was certainly, we had to be evacuated. You never really think about, that until something happens. And, what I like about my conversations with Marcus and, what I know about him, he helps you prepare for those things, even when you don't know you're preparing for them. So that's really what I like about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So thank you all for joining us this week for another episode of What's Sizzlin'. Head on over to iTunes or wherever you're getting this podcast from to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It really does help out the show. As always, if you'd like more information about today's guest or becoming a guest yourself, or if you need marketing support, all of that can be found at creativesizzle.com/What's Sizzlin'. Thanks again, and I'm Mitch Levinson.
And I'm Julia O'Connor.
And we'll see you next time.